Hi everyone, welcome back to Lair Academy. It's Mickey again, and in this video we're going to be coding the upload method of our controller. So let's open up our IDE, and we're going to open up the upload controller.php. You can find that underneath HTTP controllers and then upload. Now specifically, we're going to be working with the store function here. Now the way that we're going to code it is we're just going to kind of throw everything in and we'll come back and clean it up later. However, the first thing we want to start with is some rules for the file that we're going to be uploading. We need to make sure that the field is required and that it is indeed an image. And for now, let's just use the controller validation function. So we'll say this validate, and we'll pass in the request, followed by the rules that we want to validate against. Now, one thing to point out that the validate function, if there is an error, it will kick the user back automatically with the error messages. However, the one thing that we're going to still need to check is the file itself. So the first thing that we're going to check is we're going to make sure our request has a file, and the name of the file is just going to be file. And finally, we have to make sure that this file is valid. And we can do this by accessing the request and then the file function, following the isValid function, which will return true or false. So now that we know we have a file and the file was uploaded successfully, we can store some information into our database. So the first thing I want to do is just kind of throw our file into a new variable. Instead of accessing request and then passing the file in, we'll just store it in a variable called file. The next thing we need to do is come up with a unique storage name, and we can use unique ID followed by the file's extension. So we'll have something with a bunch of characters .png. And finally, we need to store the original name into the database just so we can show it to the user. And to do this, we'll access our file, and the function we'll have is get client original name. And if you're unfamiliar with these functions, you can check them out in the Laravel documentation. The next thing we're going to have to do is store this information into our database. So we want to return an image, and we will create an image record. And we're going to have to pass in a couple different variables. We're going to pass in the original underscore name, and it is going to equal our original name. And we also need to pass in the storage name. And again, that's just going to access our storage name variable. Alright, so just looking at this, we are creating an image in the database, and then we are returning that record into the image variable. The only thing we need to do is write a new function, and we'll call it attach image, where we pass in the file name. And because we are using the image model here, let's actually go to the top and import it. We'll say use app models image. Now, before we switch back over to the image model and create the attach image, we're going to have to return a response back to the browser. We can do this by just saying return response, and in our response, we want to just include the image from the model that we're creating above. And next, we can just return a 200 header. That's just basically telling the browser that everything's okay. We also want to return a response if our file hasn't uploaded correctly or we haven't included the file. So again, we could just say return response, and then this time let's return an array, and we're going to return a response text, and this text is just going to be the error, and for now we can say there was a problem uploading your file. And we also want to make sure that we return a response code, and in our case this time we're going to be returning a response code of 422. And if you don't know, a 422 just basically says that I have data, but there was a problem with it. Now, let's switch over to our image model, and let's create that helper function. We'll just add a comment here, and we'll say the public function attach image, and it accepts a file. And for now, we'll just have a placeholder in here, so we'll just say something like store image, make the thumbnail as well. Now, with a good chunk of that PHP coding out of the way, let's switch back over and let's actually open up our view. So we can find our view if we bring over the sidebar here. We can bring in the resources, views, uploads, and then create.blade.php. And we want to edit the form tag here, and we're going to be adding an ID, and the ID will be just frm file, and the reason we're adding this ID is so we can access it through JavaScript. So let's make sure that we scroll all the way down to the bottom where we have our push script, and let's start off by making a new script tag. Now we're going to access some of the drop zone options here, so we can call drop zone options followed by the ID of the form that we just gave it. So right here at the top, frm file matches the form options here. Now within these options, we're going to have a few different things. The first thing, we're going to set max files to 1 so we can only upload one file at a time. Next, we need to make sure we write an initialization function, and this is just going to handle a bunch of different events. And the first event that we're going to hook into is the added file. We can say this on added file, which accepts an anonymous function, and that function also accepts the file. And all we want to do in this case is we want to use jQuery to hide an error message. So we can access it by $, and then we need to say error hide. Now we haven't created this yet, but we're going to be doing this in a second. But for now, let's kind of finish up these events. The next event that we want to use is on error, and if an error happens, it also accepts a function with the file as well as the error message. And this one's going to be pretty simple. All we want to do is we want to use jQuery to pass the error message into the span class that we have. And once again, we haven't created these, but it's going to come a lot more clear in a moment. For now, let's just access the ID of error message. And for that error message, we want the HTML just to be the error message dot file, and we want to make sure we grab the first error. Next, we're going to show the error itself just by using the show function. Now, like I said, it might be getting a little confusing, so let's take a break and create the error message and the error element. Right here above the form, let's add a few lines, and we're going to make a class of alert and alert danger, and we're also going to make it an ID of error, followed by a short style of display none. So we just don't want this error message to show right off the bat. Within the error element, we'll add a span with the ID of error message, and that will just be the error message that we get back from PHP. Now, we want to make sure everything is working, so if we come back to our upload and refresh our page, we can then inspect the element, and right above the form class here, once we drill down into it, you should see we have an error message with the display as none. Now, if we come in and we try and upload a non-image, we'll get the error message that was thrown from the controller. However, we need to fix this message here as it's just an object. Now, this is a pretty quick fix, and just by doing a little bit of Googling, you could also find the error message yourself. But what we're going to access is the drop zone component itself. So we'll say file.preview element, and we want to make sure that we're going to find an element within that, and it's going to have a class of DZ error message, and we're going to set the text of that message to the error message file that we have above here. So let's just go ahead and copy and paste that. Alright, so we wrote quite a bit of JavaScript there. Let's switch back to Chrome and let's make sure we test this. Once we're back here, we can refresh, and let's upload a non-image again, and when we hover over it, we should see the error message there. Once again, we can try and upload another file, and this should fail because we have max files as 1. We can see we cannot upload any more images. So our error messages are showing up correctly now. We need to make sure that we have a method written so when we upload an image and it has been uploaded successfully, that something happens. Right now, if we take a look in the network tab and we scroll down to the store method, you can see that we are returning the image that gets created within our database. And I think for now, we're just going to kind of cheat a little bit here. What we're going to do is let's switch over to our IDE, and we're going to hook into another event. So we'll say this on, and the event we're going to hook onto is success. So if the file was uploaded successfully, we're going to throw an anonymous function that accepts a file and a response. And for now, all we're going to do is manipulate the location. So we could say location.href is going to be equal to /view, and then because we have the image coming back, we could say response.id. So that will give us the image ID to throw into the view itself. Now we need to make sure that we test this, and if we switch back and upload an image and we click an actual image, I am expecting an error here, and you can see we got it. However, our location is view/3, which just happens to be the ID of the image that we uploaded. Whew, alright, that was pretty long. We're actually going to end this video here, and in the next video we'll work on creating the thumbnails and actually saving them and the image itself to our storage. Thanks for watching.